Hey there, welcome back to Tennille Talks. So this is a channeled message, and I kind of received the general tagline for this one, and it's called "When the Client is Mistaken as a Counterpart." And so, to be a divine being, a light one, a priest or priestess, somebody that is spiritually gifted, we are in a physical world, and so when you have a spiritual gift, you have gifts in this world attached inside of your vessel, but they are gifts from beyond the realm. And so you are bringing gifts from one world and using them in another world for your success. But it's not for your personal success and gain. It's actually so that the greater story can move forward successfully, right? And the greater story is the divine story that unfolds day after day inside each of us, but also collectively for all of us. And so turning the client into a counterpart as a worker of God, as a worker of light, you are on a mission. And so all of the people assigned to you in your lifetime are your clients. Okay, let's consider them to be clients on our caseload. And so from the time you were born until your last breath, you have been assigned a caseload of people, souls, and vessels that are supposed to cross paths with you, some for a day, some for a month, some for a decade, and some forever. But nonetheless, these people are assigned to you because something about you is necessary for them to grow. Now, your birth, the story around your conception, and how your parents and your family members responded to your entry into your world is very much a part of your assignment. And so in some families, people may have wanted to become pregnant. They may have prepared space. They may have set up finances. They were totally ready to welcome in a new soul. And I can bet you that many divine beings, most times, we do not enter the world having people ready and waiting and happy to see us, right? And so our journey begins almost before conception because of the people and the families that we are born into. So our very existence can be triggering, right? And so who is your mother? Who was your father? Who were their parents? How old were they? What were they going through? Had they been abused? Were they abusing substances? Did they have sex? Was your conception a sexual experience that they chose? Was it forced upon them? Right? Did they have children before you? Were you born completely healthy, or were you born with some type of complications? Financially, were your parents independent, or were they still dependent? Were they young? Were they below the age of 18, or were they older? All of those answers to those questions determine the type of climate and environment that you were to be born into. And that environment determines how people will perceive you, embrace you, love you, and accept you, right? And so your mission starts way before you leave the womb and start your first breaths on earth. And so I want you to know that most of us are going to have childhoods and childhood experiences that are pretty traumatic. And so the idea is that people almost use you as a punching bag, as a vessel to purge whatever the darkness is that's within them, right? And so all of the different forms of abuse, many times I think, people almost think that you can take it because nothing they do to you has ever truly broken your spirit or changed who you are at your core. And I want you to know that as a child, the way people treat you and teach you about who you are, the way people love you or don't love you, the way they touch you, is it a gentle touch or a gentle embrace? Or is it a slap? Is it a kick? or are they sexually gaining gratification off of your body as a child? Like, I want you to think about all of those things, because those experiences are going to lay the foundation for the relationships that you will choose and have in your adulthood, right? And so the families that we are born into give us a system. Essentially, the human body is a machine. They all run the same way. And the difference between one body to the next is the soul, the spirit, the mechanisms of your subconscious, right? It's your consciousness that separates one body to the next. But typically, fingers do the same thing, feet do the same thing, right? We all have the same machinery. And the programs that we run are dependent upon the lineage and the bloodlines and the families that we are born into. And so you are given a program by your family, and you run that program for the rest of your life until you decide it is no longer a program that you want to run, right? And so you have to be conscious about what you are subconsciously projecting out into your own reality. So, if you are unaware that you are running a program, if you have a belief system, if you are honoring certain truths about yourself, if you don't know that you are doing these things, then you are going to be living a life that looks and feels very much like the one that was given to you in your youth, in your infancy, in your childhood. And so there comes a point in time when a light being, a divine one, a light one wakes up and they realize that they are actually on a mission. They are serving God, right? The way they speak, the way they live in itself is an opportunity for others to watch and to learn, right? Not everything that you are teaching has to be spoken. Sometimes just the way you live, the way you approach life, the way you treat others. For those that are just spectators, they can learn from just watching how you exist in this realm the way that you do. Now, let's talk about turning clients into counterparts. And so sometimes the clients that come to us are going to have some of the same wounds or trauma that our family or our parents or the people in our childhood environment had, right? And so the idea is, are we going to allow the people that come to us in our adulthood to treat us the same way that we were treated as a child? Right? Now, as children, we were unable to protect ourselves. And so we were subjected to the wounds of others. And so however they projected their own darkness out into the world and onto us, we kind of just had to take it on the chin. And I say that lightly, but the things that most of us have endured have been pretty gruesome. And so please know, I'm just saying it, but I'm not negating the fact that the wounds are very deep, right? And not many of us have had the privilege to turn those wounds into scars just yet. And that's what the journey is about. The hope is that everything will eventually become a scar, right? And that's when we get to take the knowledge and we get to transmute that into wisdom. And then we get to use that wisdom to turn the light on for another that's almost being stuck in darkness, okay? And so here's the thing, when we have familiar spirits, right? When somebody has a spirit in them that reminds us of our mother or our stepfather or our father, we tend to gravitate towards these people. And in many ways, we try to love them and fix them and unconditionally offer ourselves to them in the same way that we loved our parents, no matter what they did to us in our childhood. And so this is actually a client. This was never supposed to be a counterpart. This was never supposed to be an equal. This is never supposed to be somebody that we laid with, that we had children with, that we attempted to build a lifelong journey with. Now, I say never, but obviously the way it happens is the way it's supposed to happen. But what I'm saying is that the system that we are running inside of us determines how long people can stay in our life and the type of people that can stay in our life. And so at some point you realize this was a client. I was supposed to help you. you were supposed to then, reveal to me that the growth that I've made, and then we are to be released. And so the idea is, when people feel familiar and when they carry familiar spirits, if we are not awakened to who we are and to our mission and our journey, we may think that those people are supposed to be with us much longer than the assignment actually says it should last, And so, just a perfect example, my mother wasn't the most affectionate. She was kind of cold, kind of calculated, very cerebral and logical, just, always watching, always kind of note taking, not necessarily with pen and paper, but just always documenting mentally, right? And so she always had a reason for why she didn't do whatever she didn't do, or why she had to treat you the way she treated you. Always had to justify it, right? She could mentally rationalize why the abuse was the abuse. And that was just it. There was no emotion. And, at some point I had done a session with a spiritual teacher, and she said to me very easily, "So you married your mother." And I mean, I didn't marry my mother, but I totally married my mother, right? And so the love that I was used to receiving and the love that I understood most would have been my mother's love. And so me not being conscious of me, my patterns, my behaviors, the things that I believed about myself and my own worth and value, it meant that I was running a system that was given to me in my childhood. And because I was subconsciously allowing the system to make conscious decisions for me, I was choosing partners that felt just like that love or lack of love that I first received as a child. And so in many ways, I'm divorced, but my marriage to my ex-husband, he very much so was like my mother. And I don't blame him, because I don't blame her, right? And the way that she loved me or didn't love me makes me then say, well, how was she loved? Who loved her? What was her mother like? What was her father like, right? When she was pregnant with me, did she receive support? Did she want to be pregnant? Did I interrupt her growth and development? How old was she, right? And so then we start to ask questions as opposed to placing blame and, almost just needing to be her victim. I am not my mother's victim. I am a circumstance, and the circumstances surrounding me and my experience with her are directly connected to the condition that she was in and her state of mind when I entered the world. And so all of those things, all of those questions, all of that needs to be considered prior to us deciding who our counterpart will be. Because we need to try to understand, why is it that I'm picking to be in a long-term committed union with someone like you? What part of me is picking you, right? Are you supposed to be a client? Are we supposed to grow alongside one another? Is this supposed to only be for 3 weeks? Is this supposed to be for 3 months, 3 years, 3 decades? Like, what is this truly supposed to be? What am I to gain from this? What is it about this person that seems very familiar? And is this person bringing out the evolved version of me? Or are they affirming who I used to be or who I believed I was? And so turning clients into counterparts, I think, takes up a lot of a light worker or priestess's journey. I truly do. Because that's the way we work through our own childhood trauma. Once we get to adulthood or just our own independence, where we have the power to choose who, what, when, why, all of those. Once we get to choose, most of us are going to be working through our trauma. and the karma that's been stored in us based on our bloodline, our family, and our lineages. And then at some point, once we have purged and transmuted and turned all of that knowledge into wisdom, then we'll start to realize that we actually have more autonomy than we ever truly knew we had. And so then we become very choosy about the people that we allow in our space, because we understand who we are and we don't want to compromise that. And most, or the beginning stages of our journey are going to look a lot like self-sacrifice, where we are loyal, we are just loyal, and we love because we know it's right, and we just are committed to all of these beautiful values, even if it means it's killing us slowly, and then at some point we learn the benefit and the safety and the necessity of boundaries, and that it is truly a boundary that prolongs our life, because being in the company of the wrong person is like a slow death. It's like having a tire with a leak. Like every day it's getting flatter and flatter, but it's happening so slowly that you really don't realize that it's losing air. And so like that is what happens when you have a light one in a long-term or binding contract with somebody who truly vibrationally should never even be in the same dimensional realm with them. You know what I mean? And so when people come into your life that don't reflect your evolution and your growth, sometimes that is just a test to see if you know who you are, to see if you know how far you've come. Sometimes it's just a test, and the test can be done when you put your pencil down. The test doesn't have to be done. You can check over your answers as many times as you want, but at some point you have to believe in yourself, and you have to trust in yourself. You have to trust in your own inner knowing. And so don't be discouraged when people cross your path that look like they are an older version of who you were or who you would have accepted or embraced. Don't be upset. Realize that it is a test to see how quickly you can put that pencil down and move on to the next segment of your journey or your mission. Okay? And sometimes I want you to know that it may take a lot longer for you to stop double checking and questioning and reevaluating. And however it happens is how it's supposed to happen. There's no room for regret. There are no regrets. Every perceived mistake or every failure is truly just a lesson. It is a lesson. And so love the lesson. And once you truly trust and believe that you have moved beyond that lesson, the next one will come. Right? And so forgive yourself, love the people that have crossed your paths, and consider the fact that all of the programs that we were giving in our childhood by way of family, those were divinely designed for us, right? And there are going to be people that cross your path that are running that same program, and there's something in you that needs to unlock and to free them of whatever it is that they're running and believing about themselves. And so this is a beautiful job. It's good work, but it's hard work. And sometimes it can get dark, and sometimes we can lose sight and we can lose our way, which is why you have those spiritual gifts. You have the gifts from beyond the realm to help you through the darkness. You literally have brought light here. You have light from the other world that you are using to help you when times get tough or when the shadows become so thick that you can't see your way through them. So keep up the good work. You're doing a beautiful job. And in the event that you've ever attempted to turn a client into a counterpart, forgive yourself and realize that you put that pencil down, or if you haven't, you soon will, and to just trust that that maybe that relationship is reflecting an older version of you that no longer exists. An older version of you totally would have embraced that person, but something about this new space that you're in, it's just not feeling comfortable. And so celebrate that. Don't be dismayed at the entry of someone that vibrationally is not your match. Thank you so much for coming to Tennille Talks. This was just a download. I'll see you on the next one.